Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. How to tell the world you're here, and why is that even required? You see, I feel we human beings are storytellers. And really, our sensory perception is being translated into a subjective realm. If we were to look at what has happened potentially, there first was a world, then there emerged a self in this world. So first a giant object, then a small object, then the small object noticed the giant object. Pretty much we're objects that have woken up. And if you were to ask what is the purpose of an alive object, what is the purpose of a moving object, is to experience how far the movement can go. And what that means is we have to experience the depths of our physical movement, how we exist as an object, and we have to experience the depths of how this object has become a subject to itself. As far as I'm concerned, every human being should be right now wondering about what the human being is. We have accepted too soon a story. I find that, can you imagine an educational system where human beings, what is first brought to their attention is how the world is filled with objects, and how they are part of this objective landscape, and how they have been, in some sense, by being animate, named. And the moment you're named, you become a player in the linguistic simulation. So I would say an object moved to itself, became a subject. All that a subject can do is to expand or to return back to the void. We're either infinitely just continuing, or we leave the room. We either stay in infinity's room or we leave it. And you know what's interesting? We are left to do nothing other than communicate after we have moved. That means, let's say, every person got a proper amount of exercise and physical movement and all that. It's like after, or let's say we suddenly found all the ways to physically move as a human being. You know, like contortionists went next level, parkour people went to next level. People who do parkour, so it becomes something where we completely comprehended how to move as an object, and so to now move as a subject means that we have to endlessly try. Just like people suddenly somebody did a backflip and it worked, and they're like, okay, I have my backflip, you know. So we have to do the same with subjects. We have to see in how many ways can we move as a subject. And so when somebody says, I believe I'm a body, that's a subject. When they say, I believe I'm a mind, that's a subject. When they say, I believe I'm a soul, I know I'm a soul, that's still the communication of it is a subject. And what's fascinating is everything communicated to the outer realms, because there's only space and objects in front of your eyes. Everything communicated has to be divided. It's like space and objectivity. Matter and space are like a sieve. So what I'm saying is that anything communicated in the outer realms is a simulation. Anything that is instantaneous before communication, that is like the experience of the inner realms. I'm pretty much saying in front of our eyes we move as a self in existence. Behind our eyes we move as a world in experience. So think of it that in the outer realms you have to move to things. In the inner realms, things move to you. Excuse me. Dear listeners, let me just get straight to it. Pretty much we are objects that we didn't move. Then we began moving. And then we began moving on a level to ourselves where subjects arose, where we arose as a subject. For a long time, the cosmos has been a silent place. For the longest time, it was not possible to create a podcast. It took us 4.5 billion years to be able to record a podcast. Honestly, huge silent phase, huge unconscious phase of being an object. Now we're conscious as an object, subject, and as we're living in the world, that tends to mean the object and subject cannot fulfill all of it. There's still something to do here. So you can say the unknown surpasses the object and the subject, and pretty much human beings are creatures that are mobile in these two dimensions. So what that means is it's like we're stranded on an island on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and all we have to do to figure things out, like a cosmic escape room, is that we are objects that move, and in some sense we are subjects that communicate. And so I find that's where the clue is, the common denominator, as if you drew a Venn diagram between an object and a subject, and that middle part was the whole story of life. We become humble when we realize we're a fragile object. The human body is fragile. Sometimes it's miraculous how it's here. Sometimes when I try to fathom how the early ancestors, our earliest ancestors had the intelligence to survive, I have to only consider that we were an animal. You know why? Because animals don't have a linearized sense of reality to create a step-by-step way to go about it. Animals are instinctual in accordance to their environment. So we are literally the mystical riddle of this universe is like, why are we here? And we're looking at what is here, and our sense of our definition of here is matter, you know? And the mysterious thing is that how the mind comes across is that the mind is like watching your body your whole life. We can say, except in deep sleep, it's absent there perhaps, but it's really like the yin-yang symbol, to be honest. It's like the mystery of the world is the circle, and this mystery is divided between the visible and invisible, the known and the unknown, the simple and the complex. You know, we have the word eternity, but I would like to create a word right now, and it's the word instant. 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 Eternity. Doesn't sound right. Eternity. So we have the idea of eternity, time ad infinitum, time equals the infinity symbol, and then we have insta-eternity, where it's eternity that has nothing to do with time. It's just instantaneously alive. So it's like trying to understand the system by how it's moving, how it plays out in a time, in a span of time, and suddenly instantaneously looking at a system. So if we were to take a photograph, an instant photograph of a temporary and eternal lens picture, let's say, it would all be instantaneous. So what that means is it's like we're living in a film, but we can conceptualize it in frames. And so what that means is just the human mind can never know what the world is. It could just have uh, guesses that are close enough to it. A gene self-replicates, and the character in the story of humanity, the subjective experience, wants to continue. So technically, we are not just self-replicating genes, we are also self-replicating selves. The same thing our body is doing, our mind is doing for an abstract echo of the object. Sometimes when I wonder what is understanding, like what is seriously, like what is the human being doing here? You know, aside from some sort of journey, physical journey of your actual biological life, there's the opportunity to contribute to the mind of civilization. Right now, we don't experience this, but in the future, it's going to be a kind of situation where if people are asked, what do you do? Like, what's your work? They will kind of be, I find that it would be a categorization between serving the body of an advanced civilization or serving the mind of an advanced civilization. Pretty much we're bees, you know, and we are gathering uh, ideology. We're gathering experiences actually, and we're using our experiences to build the hive. Okay? So, this mind of serving the mind and body of the civilization, this won't happen until the bees realize they're bees. We are right now bees who are trying to build one hive, but some of the bees want to build it in another way. It's like some want to build it hexagonal, some want to build it in a square, some want to build it in a triangle, some want to build it in a circle. And so right now there is, you can say in a very interesting way, a sort of geometrical collision of how individual creatures on a rock are keeping the picture of the whole thing to themselves. So what I'm saying is we don't have a sort of firm, giant statue where everybody on the planet can see kind of an ethos, a story of humanity, you know? Right now we are in the shadow of the legends of the past. Like I thought about it really, if the kind of behavioral pattern we see in modern civilization continues, in the future, people who have emotions are gonna be like legends. It's like, oh my God, did you imagine like 100 years? Okay, let's say imagine like thousands of years in the future, human beings suddenly went from like, okay, the human being was like, yo man, Maybe I should like change my hands into robotic hands, and then the human being had robotic hands and they could do like work and everything like easier. Then the person's like, okay, let me change my legs into a robot, and eventually, bit by bit, what was naturally human became dehumanized into a mechanism. And so a mechanism is a repetition, but human emotion comes from mistakes and variety and novelty. So if in the future people become like robots, us right now with our spontaneity and emotional rise and falls are like gods to them pretty much. We're like myth to the future generations if the dehumanization of nature continues. If it can, if it can be established that our minds deserve their proper life. You know what it is? It's like this. It's like our minds are like wings, and our body is just like our body. And so, it's like the whole time we have wings, but unless we care to use them, unless we want to use them, we will never know we have wings. And what's fascinating and what seems like the mind is doing is that the mind can't fly through the sky. You can't just like Superman fly into the sky, or if you had wings, just like fly into the sky, you know? So, what the mind does is the mind copy pastes the outer realm and copy pastes your objective self also in the outer realm, then allows that objective self, like as if we copy pasted the outer realms into Photoshop. With that unconditional, instantaneous ability to change, it shifts it. So, really, what the mind is doing is like our minds are honestly alien. They're observing the realm and rebuilding themselves. Like, how weird is that? And phenomenal. I honestly feel the purpose of the human being was for some time just physical movement. Now it's mind movement, and mind movement is like a river. It's like if experiencing yourself as an individual walking the street is like a drop of water on a leaf. Imagine that drop of water on a leaf falling into a river. Our minds require to live like rivers, and this is honestly why the human society is a blessing. Even though right now it's inefficient, but it's a blessing how it has even stabilized to a point. What's interesting is we realize we look like each other even though our behaviors are completely different. It's like you can poetically say human beings are even of the same skeletal tribe by just the mere fact that we have similar skeletal designs. Do you know? It's like a similar, like, cookie cutter species, Are Pretty much when we're done with moving as an object, we want to move as a subject. Now the world is strangely treating people like objects, but we're using language, which is an incredibly subjective and multidimensional system. So we are actually subjects that are oblivious they're subjects because they feel they're objects first. We are an unknown subject, oblivious that we are not an known object first. That means you need knowledge really for the ending. The beginning never has knowledge. Many things that begin, it's like again this. So you can say the law of, or the mystery, the law, or here we can't say law, but let's say the mystery of the rivers of mind. So pretty much our body is living like a drop, our mind is living like a river, and poetically our soul is living like the pure unknown is living like like an ocean. So we have to build 3 dimensions to civilization. A dimension where individuals completely feel individual, a dimension where individuals completely feel collectively rhythmic, and a dimension where individuals are not individuals and collective mind. So we have to, and of course I say we have to, but really it's just what I see that can happen. That means right now we have built a civilization for an individual, for individuals. Then to build a civilization for minds would mean a total different behavior of body. That would mean it would be a very strange civilization. Not strange, but to us now it would be strange. Really, to exist as a river makes the drop your past, makes the drop an illusion. So imagine you're an individual soul, you've read some yoga and Buddhism, and you think you're in some cycle of karma that's just looping as an individual lifetime after lifetime, like a video game respawn, you know, like respawning endlessly in a video game. It's like, what if to exit the simulation of a world, you may no longer be an individual? So you can say a state where our minds, where it's as if our minds are living like rivers, there's no identity, but there is endless identity. So right now we are egoic, we feel things occur on their own. But if we become egoless, without the I thought there, then one person's failure is the whole moment's failure. Then one person's success is the whole moment's success. Sometimes I wonder, like, what would our species do if there was an invasion? If there was an extraterrestrial, like literally, like right now we don't seem to notice, like and some people are like, oh man, we're the aliens, you know, let's make contact with aliens, but on some level we should kind of be happy there's nobody who's showed up yet. Let me tell you why. Because it's a coin flip. It's a coin flip of how would we be seen. Would the extraterrestrial for potentially see us equal to itself, or would it see us superior to itself? You know, would the extraterrestrial have culture and personality, or would the extraterrestrial just be like a blob of jello? We can't do much with that, you know, unless it's telepathic alien jello, you know. My point is, if our species was under extraterrestrial pressure of any sort, whether in the inner realms or outer realms, we are wise enough as a species to retaliate. It doesn't mean there is victory. Sometimes when you start something that is a big project, there is no victory. It's a dream, it's an illusion, it's a miracle. Sometimes the victory is a miracle, and all you're left with is like mini battles that you have to keep going through. As if like every chess movement has an implication far beyond just that one movement. And so, what it would be is that first we would have to wonder what is being intruded. That means an advanced civilization under alien invasion would first have an analysis of what is being invaded. That means if extraterrestrials come and invade our planet physically, a multidimensional civilization would, in some sense, be like, okay, what are these? They're like, it's like a dog pulling the pants of an advanced civilization. Do you know what I mean? Like in the movies you see. So it's as if like if we see the extraterrestrial is interested in having a physical relationship, if the extraterrestrial invasion is physical, then we wouldn't have to fear too much because they're stupid aliens, you know. They're still like hungry animals, you know. If we see an alien that still needs physical resources, it's like not advanced at all, you know. At least compared to our advancement, you know. But imagine if the alien invasion was happening on a mental level. How many people would be lost in thought? It's as if we have no discipline. That even if extraterrestrials came down, what are we gonna do? Be like, okay, join the circus, guys. What? Like, based on how we define the dimensions of the human being, we build a civilization in accordance to what the human being is. And so, what's interesting is based on so many human beings being born and having different views on how the universe should stand. For me, it is really an entrance into the multidimensional. You know, that means we may look at 2020 and be like, all right, it was a you know strange year in history, but I would say it is also that moment when the past could no longer convince the present that it has no future. Every human being is like a neuron in the future collective brain of humanity. We don't realize it. It's like right now, I don't say this in a derogatory way, I say it in a shocked way. That due to massive or large-scale language worship, our species, literally an advanced extraterrestrial species, doesn't have to do much. They don't have to even physically invade. They just have to change our thoughts. Right now, people's relationship with language and with their own future, I find, is like in a carrot connected to a rope, connected to a stick to them. Where it's like the person's like endlessly chasing your paradise and not realizing the whole time that they're chasing was their paradise. They were already in it. If you are a creature of language, you're designed literally to be manipulated. If you realize you're not a creature of language, it's as if a three-dimensional freedom is looking at a two-dimensional problem and all it can do is laugh. I feel that how it's going to happen, how an advanced civilization is going to arise, is like every person suddenly hearing like this strange, not strange, but this new song from within. Imagine you suddenly heard the best music, best symphony, just this beat, this rhythm. And so this rhythm, I find that it's like when the true nature of the human being trusts the moment and just goes forward. It's as if just practice on, it's like master existing, master the journeying of your attention alone. And when you're comfortable with that, it doesn't matter where your attention is thrown. It's an attachment to location that makes us freak out over our mind, behind our eyes. If we were to close our eyes and wonder about where we are, the abstraction, the potential of abstraction of the inner realms is unbelievable. That means any movie scene you've seen, your mind has an ability to even see yourself in it. And think about it, that if your mind has an ability to see a movie scene and be able to make somehow subconsciously your sense of self interchangeable with the sense of self, the sense of self in the character in the film interchangeable with your sense of self, like a sort of inseparability of identification in that moment. So it becomes one of those things that every image the mind has to treat as real, has to treat as something to do something with it. That means even if our sensory perception wasn't real, we're some part of this creaturehood is treating it as such, you know. Because we're treating our minds as our brains as data processors, right? Sensory data processors. So it's processing. So a verb processing wouldn't exist unless there was something to be processed, you know. So what does that mean? That means the mind is not a thing, but she has to treat the world as a thing to respond to it. It's as if, what do we do with all this light in our eyes? And it was like somewhere in the cosmos there was this great idea to turn it into a creature. Turn it into a story of a life, you know. We're literally taking in light and making sound and using that sound to exist in a sub-linguistic level to ourselves. Subjective linguistic level to ourselves. And so I'm saying, like, there's two approaches really as a human being. Because first thing is, I'm trying to tell people you got an inner realm. Now let's say you heard me. And so now, then the next question would be like, Mr. Within, what's the point of knowing your inner realms? What's the point of having this mind, right? And so this mind is very interesting because this mind is like, imagine your attention as a spotlight or as a spotlight. And your mind, what comes into this spotlight, your mind has a choice to just know it or to use it. And a lot of people throughout the day, they actually have a lot of thoughts coming in and going. But some thoughts, they just remain. It's as if they were like a bird that passed by. But some thoughts are like a bird on your shoulder, like pecking you to pay attention to something, you know? So I would say out of those two options of just seeing or responding to the sight that comes, responding to the sight is the most advanced thing that animals have done. Communication, even if somebody says something that if you think about it, out of all the animals on this planet, it's either just physical material advancement or immaterial advancement. And if we were to wonder how do the subjects on this planet evolve, not just objects, I would tell you subjects evolve by learning and observing additional dimensional creation. So subjects learn, a subject is like a dolphin. It's like it jumps out of water, then jumps back into water, then jumps out of water, jumps back into water. You know, the subject suddenly is separate from the object when you close your eyes and think about who you are, and then suddenly when you open your eyes, the subject is the object. Really, what the inner realms and outer realms to me feel like, it literally feels like, imagine someone going into a portal, like a stargate, that between two different worlds. Imagine a stargate. Imagine a person going in, but they're not walking in normally. They're going in with their right shoulder going into this portal first. And imagine the person goes into the portal, where the portal, like a wavering plane, is exactly between their two eyes. So as if their left eyes, their left part of the face is in like one side of the portal, and the right side of their face is another side of the portal. I really feel the inner realms and outer realms has this sort of yin-yang flow to it. That means the mystery of the outer realms is the unknown. The mystery of the inner realms is the known. I feel it's just the best thing a creature can do. And that is to share their eyes with a world that inevitably will close its eyes. There is nothing to be judged by when every day happens once through. So you can say there is no such thing as good and bad people. Self-judgment is out of control. I feel like going into a poetry time. I would like to read for the audience poem mystical hymns that I wrote in 2016. Yeah. So keep in mind, I'm going to be reading. You're going to hear my writer's voice from 4 years ago. I wrote this poetry book called Drop Mana. This poem from the poetic work Ramana is named Coded Numbers of the Divine. Coded Numbers of the Divine. So it begins. Yes, you are correct. This is not the movie Matrix and there are no pills needed. Sometimes numbers may grow angelic wings and become an empty mirror reflecting the only truth. Can the divine be the breath of the breath within you? Your life is your life. Are you ready to live it? We are all crumbling leaves in spring. Do not let any shadow convince you that it's dark. The next poem is titled The Multidimensional Benevolence of the One True God. Does God enjoy a tearless reflection in the mirror? Life is more than words. This is the best kept secret of life. Have you already been revealed to yourself? I am a poet of starlight if you hadn't guessed yet. I am a guest of this world. For my beloved reader, you're not reading these words, but your own mind. All angelic imagery opens its wings in the now. The wonder of liftoff is that we choose how language moves. You are a conscious traveler within the absolute. All guessing games must be put aside like weapons in the hand of a child. War is not for human beings or from them. The wise ones know this. Let the heart of life be fully open. Just a quick commentary here, guys, where it says war is not for human beings or from them. I feel the truth to that is that when you look at animals in nature, if they have the option to play, like you can see, like if you were to look at animals, it's like some animals, there's a phase of their life where they fight. You know, there's certain moments where they fight, there's certain moments where they play, there's certain moments when they rest and whatnot and procreate. And so there's different weight states, right? And I find if we were to wander out of all those different behavioral states, the human being is really maintained. We are a playful civilization. We are literally a species that has been gifted awareness earlier, and because it's a gifted awareness earlier, our minds are ahead of our bodies, so we can laugh at the world we're being, the world we are physically in, through the lens of the world that is ahead in our inner realms. Anyways. Okay, I love this poem's title. The sky moves for no one. Oneness has become the recent news. Is God surprised? How do your eyes feel about their sight in an empty sky? Is it possible for emptiness to look in its own eyes? The benevolence of non-violence is that it allows others to see self through the other self. The sky moves for no one. That is why the divine is here. The next poem is Airplane Food of the Gods. Once a poet looked through an airplane window and saw his pen move. Love at first sight means sight was here first. What are you noticing about the tilt of a world that spins in the middle of nowhere? When the pilot flies all the gods through a new plane of existence, did eternity have a temporal cost? Never forget, you are the divine in your eyes. This next poem is called Heart of a Sleepless Child. There is no such thing as sickness. Do not believe in bullshit even when the bull does not. Call the tyranny of a little person, can the tyranny of a little person lead to the heights of a throne beyond the game? What makes a crystal relevant to the color beneath it? Love knows no bounds. Know this and you will be boundless like the universe within. What gives the free a heart that beats beyond words? How the divine works is that it works beyond measure. For where do you think the measurement came from? And actually, I'll read one more. The next poem is The Love of Two Doors. As close as you are to the me and you, how fast can a species realize the collectivity of truth? Do not give thought a place to occupy in the mind of abstraction. This, of course, does not mean fight the unknown with limited knowledge. Do not forget, the writer of this poem is a mystic before he is a poet. Can your senses be dancing in mystery? How does the heart of the past weep for a future that has forgotten where it came from? When the imagination becomes a wild horse, what need do you find to tame what is beyond you? The myth of this world is that it was empty, now it's full. The next myth will be how emptiness and fullness are one moment. But my dear reader, do not forget the poet of this poem is fighting off language every day. The last myth is also the first truth of a new world of allowance. Let the divine take care of you through all that you can be. We are all poets hiding our divine nature in plain sight. When your fingers move the pen faster than your mind, you have become the only creation that was its own creator. Isn't existence self-evident? For how long must this body be howled through the cycles of time and space? Is meditation a practice of an awareness? The women of this world must guide all men into their true nature that is beyond the forms of mankind. The feminine is the entrance to the masculine. The masculine is the exit to the feminine. These words are very carefully written by the cosmos, for the love of two doors is a moment with an absolute glow. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Let us no longer bother the simultaneous allowance of existence. Okay, that's the end of the poetry time. Honestly, what can we do? We have to use our energy for something, and we can use it to just build a temporal fantasy for the personality, or a sort of eternal contribution to the presence of the species. I mean, sometimes for me, I honestly feel like the species is the mountain, I am just a pebble. And so that's the majesty of the scale of value that the human mind, I don't want to say conjures, but projects. You can say, if you consciously move, that's living. If you unconsciously move, that's the world living, not you. In the subtitle where I've said ego vision, the whole point of this idea is that an ego can be on the branch and experience that dimension, and an ego can go into the sky and see the whole forest. Now, when I say inner realms, the less you are an I thought, the more the ego is flying into the sky and seeing things as one collective landscape. But the more you see yourself as a specific person and want a specific outcome, that specificity is like landing on a branch. So you get limited in accordance to where the ideological system leads, or where your attention, or how you pilot your attention, or if you don't care to pilot it, the world's probably fine. You know, it's like, imagine someone with a divine ego. And what that would mean is, like, suddenly the person's, let's say poetically in an archaic sense, the person entertained this sort of guardians, interdimensional guardians, like spirit guides or whatever. And then the spirit guides were like, hey man, you're making a mistake, you know, or they come up to the person and they're like, you gotta go right instead of left or whatever. And so the person with the divine ego playfully would be like, I don't need guides right now, you know, because the situation is that unless the person dares to look at it from the beginning, they won't completely understand it. But because we open our eyes in the middle of this long-term, long existential roller coaster, and we're suddenly on it for a little while, so this kind of like imagined existence being like this like giant dragon flying in the sky, and every person born is like suddenly born riding this dragon, you know, this elemental dragon. What I mean is that the world has a mind of its own, and whether it has a personality, that's another thing, but it's behaving as if the intelligence is there before the appearances. This literally means knowledge based on appearance is shallow. it's like we want to see it to believe it, but then we need to wear glasses, you know. The person's like, I gotta see it to believe it, but let me find my glasses first, you know. That's the level of truth we're entertaining nowadays. The dust on the telescope has become the philosophers, like as if like philosophers nowadays are treated like pigeons, you know, where they're waiting for scientists to throw like breadcrumbs. You know, it's kind of hard to watch. There is a reason Einstein said imagination is, I don't know what he said exactly, I think it was imagination is the sign of intelligence or something, and I wondered for the longest time why, because intelligence is based on structure, form. Imagination is non-linear, chaotic, sometimes without reason, irrational, just bursting out. It's like literally, imagine like a water hole on the planet where suddenly water from the center, I don't know, from the earth, like suddenly pours out or something, you know. So that's kind of like, it's like there is pretty much, I think the question is, what does an unknown viewer do with known views temporarily? And the best thing Mr.Within is saying is that the human being should communicate. I thought if some people are shy yet they still want some sort of context to communicate, they can just put the term advanced communicator and then put on the side their name. I'll give you an example. Like something like that. And so every person, I feel, should be encouraged, inspired to share, you know. It's as if, imagine like suddenly you saw a talking dolphin. It's like, wouldn't you want to listen to that dolphin? So now imagine you're seeing like 8 billion talking 8 billion talking, you know, advanced apes, you know. It's like, you know, what the caterpillar is to the butterfly, is what the human unconscious body is going to be to the collective conscious mind. And language is the cocoon. This ape is realizing it is beyond an ape through speech. And so speech is not just like a supermarket transaction. Back in the day, the ancient Greeks understood how to speak. They had this concept called the rhetoric. It was as if it was poetically the spirit of the moment moved the words, you know. And there was a time that in certain civilizations, certain cultures, I should say, they spoke in verse. Everybody spoke in verse, as if they were conscious that the mind, the rivers of the mind were not dry yet, or were not forgotten. So, how do you tell the world you are here? You can go shout it. Or you can silently live it. That means if there was just this view that everybody is freaking out, imagine 8 billion human beings are just some unknown, this whole space-time continuum's like eerie mystery is like is like a battlefield. And so 8 billion, imagine, advanced minds are thrown into just this clumsy temporary battlefield. And so it's as if, like, imagine you're on a battlefield. The first thing is to get yourself to some sort of position where you can actually look at the battlefield properly. Then you'll have to figure out, imagine, which side you were on, or how you in some sense moved, or why the war was happening, and even if you can see beyond the whole game. Do you know? Sometimes I'm telling you, when you realize life is kind of like endless simulations of games, that means just that's how human psychology lives to itself. It has to interact with its world. And so if it's denied interaction in the outer worlds, outer realms, to interact with the world, it will interact with the inner realms. Now that's it's a strange thing, because if a human being is not treated like a human being, their psychology descends. And so there is this chaotic factor that we don't realize. A person's mindset, it is a build-up. And it's a build-up where it's like a flight, as if you're you're a pilot of an airplane, and how you fly suggests like how the passengers experience it. Now imagine that you are a pilot of all the senses of self you have ever had. All your memories are passengers in how your attention is piloting your plane of existence. The pilots of consciousness, the advanced communicators. The advanced communicators are like the stewardesses, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, do you want apple juice, orange juice? The advanced communicators are here to kind of like respond to duality. In a poetic kind of war sense, they are the cavalry. The pilots are the generals. And nature, the nature of the human being. Since it is the greatest treasure, as a value system, it is the greatest in command. That means really what human beings are doing, it's like a spectrum. Really what it is we're waking up, and there's a spectrum between variations of selfhood. It's as if your mind is literally, the mind literally is like opening like this cloth filled with stuff. Like silly metaphor, but just go with it. Like imagine it's like this kind of like cloth bag that it just opens up, revealing what's inside it, you know? So I feel, it's, you know what it is? It's like the mind is like throwing a bunch of papers on a table at the same time. Every moment you look, it's like, it's like a bunch of papers are thrown, a bunch of probabilities of selfhood engage the moment before you actually move. And you know, just think about like a human being writing something and an alien watching that. Like, what would the alien say the human being is doing? Like, literally, if there were, right now, there's a chance, like Fermi's paradox in philosophy suggests pretty much like, where are the aliens? Like, everything's been around so long, there should be something, but where are they? Right? So it's like, where are the aliens, right? Fermi's paradox. Now we're wondering about like, okay, what if it's multidimensional? What if the aliens are in another dimension? What if all the planets are inhabited, but they're inhabited on a dimension we can't see? On a frequency, electromagnetic frequency we can't access, or we don't know how to access, or whatever. So imagine like in an invisible dimension there was a sort of otherworldly or beyond worldly audience. And this audience was watching, like, what is this human being doing? Why is the human being like, why is this object moving on a rock? You know, why is it speaking on a rock? What is the value of the creature? And really what it is just pretty much two types. Human beings are either outer explorers or inner explorers. And that's our contribution. Either our attention is on a better world, or it's on a better self. And I'll be honest, literally, if you ask people what are you doing right now in life, it's one of these two. Their attention is either on a better world or a better self, or there has been a sort of just simple selfhood where the person just leaves themselves as just like the wind. You can live as a wind on this planet too, technically being here, but by never being here. Okay, excuse me. Communication is an advanced technology. And like any sort of advanced technology, and advanced technology has a potential to be a weapon. And what does that mean? That means it has danger potential, okay? So what it means is people right now, how they use language is like, imagine a young child with a knife in its hands, and the parents are like, what the you know, the parents quickly get the knife out of the hand of the child. And so that child, imagine it gets older and it has a knife, and it can use that knife to cut fruit, or it can use that knife to hurt people. Do you see what I mean? And so language can be used to cause your system as an intelligent being to have suffering, or language can be used for you as a being to have joy or efficiency. And so what it means is to become responsible for your eyes leads to a service to where the sight came from. Pretty much it's literally like, imagine we're such a proud species. When light enters our eyes, we're like, we can't just have light give us something and we don't give anything back, and we're giving our whole subjective human history like back to light. It's like light is gifting the moment with sight, and the moment is like, okay, I gotta give something back, you know. And it's, you know, an individual with multidimensional potential and a multidimensional potential to storify ad infinitum. That means what's so cool, that's like there's so much wisdom in just the design of a tree, of how from one branch there can come many branches. And from those many branches, they will eventually get to a point where they don't branch out, and then they branch out technically in a subtler way. The stems are kind of like really weak AF branches. so so you can say it's like the leaf, it becomes temporary. So you can say eternal dimensions have branched out, and they have endless temporary leaves growing out of them, you know. Anyways, tell the world you're here. Because I mean, it's like literally like that's the only place you can speak in a world. It's like, you know, where else can you share, you know, the life of your eyes, you know? It's only here. You know, it's kind of like we're waiting for our future, but the past is being like, no, you can't go to the future, and the present's like, why past? Why? You've passed. You've gotten what you wanted. What you know? Why are you bothering me at the present moment saying that? Imagine. And the past is like, no, you gotta listen to me, and the past doesn't know anything. And so the present is kind of shocked. Should I listen to the past, or should I march with the future? What should I do? And it is only when the present realizes, before there is any like recommendation from the outer realms on your mind, you are the pilot. Those who can enjoy staring at a page, they will be fearless in writing sentences on it. If you can enjoy staring at an empty page, after a while you'll realize it's like the potential of worlds being given shape instantly. Because what it is even if you don't take any sort of mystical or spiritual angle, just look at the inventor. Someone who invents, like, what's going on there? You know, the inventor sees in the inner realms the geometry of the invention, the potential of the invention. And so we animate it. So literally it's as if imagine like the invention, like there is this story about Edison, that Edison was such a genius, you know, that when he was like very young, there were only candles around, and his mother was in labor or something, in like, I don't know, the back of it was some poverty situation, you know. And so what Edison does is, because it's so dark and it's at night, he goes and finds mirrors, endless mirrors. And not endless, but like he finds a bunch of mirrors and he puts it behind the candles, and the room has more light and the nurse can see, or whatever, you know. And so I'm saying it's like Edison was on a level where this person was looking at the candle, he was looking at light. It was, if you ask Edison's purpose, like this person was like destined to look at light a lot, you know. And so eventually he saw a man-made version of it. Do you know what I mean? He saw a way where it's as if the candle wasn't the most advanced technology anymore. It was as if before Edison made the invention, his mind was living in a world where the invention already existed. And then he brought it out. So from the inner realms, what was just a mere image or a thought or some shape, do you know? He brought it out into the outer realms. He made something that was just completely like a unreal bird flying by. He suddenly like saw the bird and drew it. You know what I mean? He made the invention. He brought it down into more solid dimensions. So what that means is, another example of like the drop, river, ocean example would be, an analogy would be like, imagine like the mind is a substance, and so the substance has a solid state, liquid state, gas state. And so it's as if reality is the solid state. Do you know? Imagination, creativity, the mind and mystery, that's the liquid state. Do you know? Where it's like semi-known, semi-unknown. And then we have the gas state, which is the pure unknown. And that's really like, honestly, what the soul can be. All those people trying to find their higher self will realize it has no dimension. It has no hierarchy. Trust me, the mind is such an expert world generator that it will endlessly. It like the mind is like a street smart. Like the mind will make the invisible viewer, it will give the invisible viewer paradise just to still be in charge, you know? Maybe that's too much of a, you know, intense example, but really what it is that you're alive once. Where else can you share this mind? Imagine you're an instrument that has never existed before, and nobody has heard the sound of this instrument. So that's how tell the world you're here. You first look at how the world is here, and as Rumi says, when I was younger, I wanted to change the world. Now that I'm older, I change myself, because he has realized his self inseparable from the world. So when you change yourself, interestingly, the world changes. Your view on the world changes. Imagine your future self came back, poetically imagine, like in a hypothetical context, like your future self came back, and you know, everybody, 8 billion people's future selves came back at the same time, and they're like, you gotta do something else. And the person's like, what do you mean? And the future self's like, just anything else other than what you And so when 8 billion imagined future selves came back in time and changed the mind of everybody at the same time, or in the same hour, then suddenly the future instantly changed. There was no error, you know. This is why time travel has to be on a collective level. Either the whole species has to time travel, or nobody has to time travel. Or poetically, there would be timeline collisions, you know. But personally, I also think time travel it's impossible, in the sense that you can't go back to the same moment with a more stretched out experiential consciousness and think it's the same. So it's like the past will never be seen by the future, technically. Rabindranath Tagore says, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. And I'll tell you, the joy of service is not individual. The only reason we can know we are human is because we never were. We are watching from a higher, you can say, like a, we're watching from a higher onion circle. You know, Shakespeare has this quote. He says, some people are born great. Some people are born great. Some people achieve greatness. Some people have greatness thrust upon them. I'll add, some people are asked to be great. It's like, literally, please, it's like, please, sir, ma'am, can you just be great in this temporary life, you know? Let your efficiency be stronger than your inefficiency, and your intuition has already led the way. Thanks for listening, and I'll be on Discord for those interested. Namaste.